Paris, France, a city shaped by fire, ambition, and endless reinvention. A place where history does not rest but constantly moves forward. Every street, every stone, every shadow carries the memory of power, struggle, art, and survival. This is not just a city, this is a living timeline of human ambition. For more than 2,000 years, Paris has been built, destroyed, and rebuilt again. Empires have claimed it, revolutions have shaken it, and its people have never stopped fighting to define it. Through kings, revolutions, war, and cultural rebirth, one thing remains constant. Paris refuses to disappear. Before it became the iconic city of light, Paris was nothing more than a fragile settlement. Around 259 BC, a Celtic tribe known as the Parisii settled on a small island in the Seine River. This island, now called Isle de la Cité, was strategic, simple, and essential for survival. The people here were not rulers or philosophers. They were fishermen, traders, and survivors. They controlled a key crossing point along the river. That control gave them importance even if they lived modest lives. Their world was not about greatness, it was about endurance. Everything changed in 52 BC. Julius Caesar arrived with the full force of Rome. The Roman Empire did not negotiate, it conquered. The Parisii resisted, but they were overwhelmed. Their settlement was burned in defiance. But Rome did what it always did. It rebuilt. The Romans created a structured town and named it Lutetia. The name itself was not grand, it meant a muddy place. But what they built there was far from ordinary. Lutetia developed into a functioning Roman city. It had roads, bathhouses, temples, and an amphitheater. Life became organized, predictable, and stable. For nearly 3 centuries this Roman system held strong. Citizens lived relatively comfortable lives under Roman rule. But beyond the walls, trouble was growing. By the 3rd century the Roman Empire was weakening. Attacks from northern tribes increased. Security disappeared and fear returned. The people of Lutetia retreated back to the island. They built walls and focused on defense. The Roman dream was fading. Then came one of the most uncertain periods in European history. The fall of Rome. In 451 AD a new threat approached. Attila the Hun marched across Europe, destroying everything in his path. Lutetia was directly in danger. The people were ready to abandon the city. Fear had taken control. Then something unexpected happened. A young woman named Genevieve stood against the panic. She convinced the population to stay. She urged them to trust, to remain, to endure. For reasons that remain unclear, Attila never attacked. His army changed direction. The city was spared. Genevieve became a symbol of hope and strength. Paris survived because its people chose not to run. By 508 AD Clovis, king of the Franks, made the city his capital. This moment changed everything. The city took the name Paris, inspired by the original Parisii tribe. It was no longer just a former Roman settlement. It became the heart of a new kingdom. Clovis converted to Christianity. Churches began to rise across the city. Paris became both a political center and a religious one. But peace never lasted long. In 845 AD a new wave of attackers arrived. Viking raiders sailed up the Seine. They targeted Paris repeatedly. They were not there to settle. They came for wealth. The city paid them off with silver just to survive. It was not victory, it was survival. The greatest test came in 885 AD. Thousands of Vikings surrounded Paris. Only a few hundred defenders stood against them. The battle lasted for months. Against all odds the city held. This moment proved something important. Paris could survive even when outnumbered. By the year 1000 Paris was still small but growing. Trade increased, markets expanded, and influence spread. The city was slowly becoming a center of power. Then came a transformation that would define its identity. In 1163 construction began on Notre Dame Cathedral. This was not just a building. It was a statement. The structure rose higher than anything around it. Its design pushed the limits of engineering. Its presence symbolized ambition, faith, and power. It took nearly 2 centuries to complete. Generations worked on it without ever seeing it finished. At the same time, another transformation was happening. The University of Paris was forming. Scholars from across Europe gathered here. They studied philosophy, theology, and law. Ideas were debated, challenged, and developed. The Latin Quarter became a center of learning. Paris was no longer just a city of power. It became a city of thought. King Philip II played a major role in shaping medieval Paris. He strengthened defenses, improved infrastructure, and built the Louvre. At the time, the Louvre was not a museum. It was a fortress designed to protect the city. Paris expanded rapidly. By 1300 it was one of the largest cities in Europe. Its population reached around 200,000. Markets thrived, trade increased, and the city became wealthy. But wealth attracts danger. The 14th century nearly destroyed everything. Famine struck first. Crops failed and people starved. Then came war. The 100 Years' War began in 1337. Paris became a key battleground. But nothing compared to what came next. In 1348 the Black Death reached the city. It spread quickly and without mercy. A huge portion of the population died. Entire neighborhoods were emptied. The city fell into silence, broken only by fear and death. Paris was no longer thriving. It was barely surviving. Revolts followed as people demanded change. Violence spread within the city. In 1420 Paris fell under English control. For years it remained occupied. Then a young girl changed the course of history. Joan of Arc. She inspired the French forces and gave them hope. Her presence shifted momentum. Paris was eventually liberated in 1436. But the damage was deep. By 1500 the city was recovering slowly. Then came the Renaissance. Art, culture, and innovation transformed Paris. King Francis I brought new ideas from Italy. He redesigned the Louvre into a palace. He invited Leonardo da Vinci to France. Paris became elegant, refined, and artistic. But once again conflict returned. Religious divisions grew. Catholics and Protestants clashed. In 1572 violence exploded. The Street Bartholomew's Day massacre shocked the city. Thousands were killed in a wave of brutality. Paris was once again covered in fear and blood. By the end of the century stability began to return. Henry IV worked to rebuild and restore order. He invested in infrastructure and improved the city. Paris moved forward again. The 17th century brought power, control, and centralization. Leaders strengthened the state and shaped Paris into a symbol of authority. Under Louis XIV France reached the height of monarchy. Paris became a center of culture, fashion, and influence. Even when the royal court moved away, the city remained powerful. It led Europe in art, language, and style. By the 18th century Paris was the center of new ideas. Philosophers questioned authority. They explored freedom, equality, and reason. But beneath the intellectual movement tension was growing. The gap between rich and poor widened. By 1789 the pressure became unstoppable. The people of Paris rose. They stormed the Bastille. This moment marked the beginning of the French Revolution. The monarchy fell. The king and queen were executed. The reign of terror brought chaos and violence. Thousands were killed. Paris became the center of revolution. Napoleon Bonaparte rose from the chaos and took control of France in 1799. Paris became the heart of his empire. He was not just a military leader, he was a builder, a strategist, and a man who understood the power of image. He reshaped Paris to reflect strength and dominance. He ordered the construction of monuments that still define the city. The Arc de Triomphe was commissioned to honor his victories. Wide roads and grand structures began to take form. He also transformed the Louvre into a public museum. Art taken from across Europe was displayed in Paris. The city became a symbol of cultural power. Napoleon introduced reforms that changed France forever. The Napoleonic Code reshaped law and governance. His influence spread far beyond Paris. But power built on conquest comes with a cost. In 1812 Napoleon invaded Russia. The campaign failed and weakened his empire. By 1814 enemy forces reached Paris. The city was occupied and Napoleon was forced to step down. He briefly returned in 1815 but his final defeat ended his rule. Paris once again stood at a turning point. The monarchy returned but the people had changed. Revolution had left its mark. In 1830 Paris erupted again. Citizens rose against the king. Barricades filled the streets. The monarchy was overthrown. Another revolution followed in 1848. Once again the people demanded change. The city became a battlefield of ideas and power. From this unrest emerged Napoleon III. He took control and transformed Paris in a way no ruler had done before. He hired Baron Haussmann to redesign the city. Old narrow streets were destroyed, wide boulevards replaced them. Parks, sewage systems and uniform buildings were introduced. The goal was not just beauty but control. Wide streets made it harder for rebels to build barricades. Modern Paris was born from this transformation. But progress came with sacrifice. Thousands were displaced as neighborhoods disappeared. Then came war again. In 1870 France went to war with Prussia. The result was disaster. Paris was surrounded and cut off. Food became scarce. People were forced to eat whatever they could find. After months of suffering the city surrendered. But the struggle did not end. In 1871 the people of Paris rebelled once more. They formed the Paris Commune. It was an attempt to create a new kind of government. One focused on workers' rights and equality. But it did not last. Government forces attacked the city. What followed was one of the bloodiest weeks in Paris history. Thousands were killed. Buildings burned. The city was left scarred again. And yet from this destruction something new emerged. The late 19th century became a golden age. This period, known as the Belle Époque, transformed Paris into a global cultural center. Artists, writers and thinkers filled the city. Painters like Monet and Renoir captured light and life in new ways. Writers and performers pushed creative boundaries. In 1889 the Eiffel Tower was built. At first many people hated it. They saw it as an ugly metal structure. But over time it became the symbol of Paris. The city embraced innovation. The Paris Metro opened in 1900. New architecture, new technology and new ideas shaped the future. Paris was alive, vibrant and leading the world in culture. But once again conflict was approaching. In 1914 World War I began. Paris was under constant threat. Enemy forces came dangerously close. The sound of war echoed near the city. For 4 years Paris endured fear, loss and uncertainty. When the war ended in 1918 the victory came at a heavy cost. Millions had died. The city survived but it carried deep scars. Then came the 1920s. A new energy filled Paris. Artists, musicians and writers from around the world arrived. The city became a hub of creativity. Jazz music filled the streets. Nightlife thrived. Paris became a place of freedom, expression and reinvention. By the 1930s economic problems spread across Europe. Tensions rose once again. In 1939 World War II began. In 1940, German forces invaded France. Paris was declared an open city to avoid destruction. The enemy entered without resistance. For 4 years Paris lived under occupation. Life continued but under strict control. Fear was everywhere. Jewish citizens were arrested and deported. Many never returned. But resistance grew in secret. People risked their lives to fight back in small ways. In 1944 everything changed. Allied forces approached. The people of Paris rose. Barricades returned to the streets. Fighting broke out across the city. Within days Paris was liberated. Freedom returned but the scars remained. After the war Paris faced the challenge of rebuilding. Not just physically but emotionally. The city became a center of philosophy and reflection. Thinkers explored questions about life, freedom and meaning. As the years passed Paris modernized. New housing, new roads and new systems expanded the city. By the 1960s another wave of unrest appeared. Students and workers protested. They demanded change in society, education and politics. The streets once again filled with demonstrations. Paris proved once more that it was a city that never stayed silent. In the decades that followed Paris continued to evolve. Modern architecture rose alongside historic landmarks. The city balanced its past with its future. But challenges remained. Social tensions, economic struggles and inequality created divisions. In 2005 riots broke out in the suburbs. The world saw that even a great city like Paris still faced internal struggles. In 2015 tragedy struck. Attacks shook the city and took many lives. Paris mourned but did not break. In 2019 the fire at Notre Dame shocked the world. A symbol of history was damaged but not destroyed. Restoration began immediately. Today Paris stands as one of the most influential cities in the world. It is a center of culture, politics, fashion and tourism. Millions visit every year. But beyond its beauty lies a history of survival. Paris has faced invasion, revolution, war and destruction. Yet it has always rebuilt. It has always moved forward. From a small island settlement to a global icon. Paris remains a symbol of resilience. A city that never stops changing. A city that never stops fighting. A city that never disappears.